Have you ever wished you had a special power or could go on a great adventure? Well, through fantasy books, you can be whoever and go on fantastic adventures. My name is Amy Post, and today I'm going to tell you all about my 5 favorite fantasy books. The first book I'm going to talk about is The Green Glass House by Kate Milford. The main character of the story is Milo, the adopted 12-year-old son of the innkeepers of the Green Glass House. During the Christmas holidays, all sorts of people begin to show up at the inn and then are stranded there due to bad weather. Some pretend not to know each other, and they all have some sort of connection to the Green Glass House. Milo, along with Meddy, who's the cook's daughter, sets about to investigate the mysterious guests and their strange connections to the Green Glass House. I'm going to read you a little part of it, starting on page 28. The fairy lights were still on along the roof and down the railing of the long staircase, but now they glowed under a half-inch glaze of snow. Milo found the paperback right away, wedged between the Will Forber whirlwind and the edge of the wooden floor. He must have dropped it when the tower of luggage had come tumbling down. He tugged the book free and tucked it in his back pocket, and he was just about to head back inside when he spotted something else on the steel tracks. It looked like a blue leather wallet, only bigger. Milo climbed down onto the rails behind the car and picked it up. And that's how he found the first map. It's The Green Glass House by Kate Milford. The next book is called Wildwood, and it's written by the singer and songwriter of the indie rock band The Decemberists, Colin Meloy, and illustrated by his wife, Carson Ellis, who also illustrates all the covers for her husband's albums. This is the story about a girl named Prue, whose life was quite ordinary until her little brother is kidnapped by a murder of crows and she has to venture into what they call the impassable wilderness of Portland, Oregon to rescue him. I'm going to read you just a little part of this one too. This one I really like. The playground was empty when they arrived, and Prue unrolled Mac, her little brother, from his swaddling and set him alongside the unhitched radio flyer. He was just beginning to walk and relished the opportunity to practice his balancing. He gurgled and smiled and carefully waddled beside the wagon, pushing it slowly across the playground's asphalt. "Knock yourself out," said Prue, and she pulled the copy of the Sibley Guide to Birds from her coat, opening it to a dog-eared page about meadowlarks. The shadows against the backdrop were growing longer as the late afternoon gave way to early evening. That was when she first noticed the crows. At first there were just a few, wheeling in concentric circles against the overcast sky. They caught Prue's attention, darting about in her periphery, and she glanced up at them. Corvus brachyrhynchus. She'd just been reading about them the night before. Even from a distance, Prue was astounded by their size and the power of their every wing stroke. A few more flew into the group, and there were now several, wheeling and diving about above the playground. A flock, thought Prue? A swarm? She flipped through the pages of Sibley to the back where there was an index of fanciful terms for the grouping of birds. A sedge of herons, a fall of woodcock, and a murder of crows. She shivered. Looking back up, she was startled to see that this murder of crows had grown considerably. There were now dozens of birds, each of the blackest pitch, piercing cold, empty holes in the widening sky. She looked over at Mac. He was now yards away, blithely toddling along the blacktop. She felt unnerved. "Hey, Mac," she called. "Where are you going?" There was a sudden rush of wind, and she looked up in the sky and was horrified to see that the group of crows had grown 20-fold. The individual birds were now indiscernible from the mass, and the murder coalesced into a single convulsive shape, blotting out the flat light of the afternoon sun. The shape swung and bowed in the air, and the noise of their beating wings and screeching cries became almost deafening. Prue cast about, seeing if anyone else was witnessing this bizarre event, but she was terrified to find she was all alone. And then the crows dove. Their cry became a single, unified scream as the cloud of crows fainted skyward before diving at a ferocious speed toward her baby brother. Mac gave a terrific squeal as the first crow reached him, snagging the hood of his jumper in a quick flourish of a talon. A second took hold of a sleeve, a third grabbing the shoulder, a fourth, a fifth touched down until the swarm surrounded and obscured the view of his body in a sea of flashing, feathery blackness. And then, with seemingly perfect ease, Mac was lifted from the ground and into the air. Prue was paralyzed with shock and belief. How were they doing this? She found that her legs felt like they were made of cement, her mouth empty of anything that might draw forth words or sound. Her entire placid, predictable life now seemed to hinge on this one single event. Everything she'd ever felt or believed coming into terrible relief. Nothing her parents had told her, nothing she'd ever learned in school could possibly have prepared her for this thing that was happening, or really, what was to follow. So that's Wildwood by Colin Meloy. I like this one. Remember when I mentioned Great Adventure? Well, the third book that I have to talk about is filled with adventure and Norse gods and magic. It's from Rick Riordan, whom most of you probably know as the creator of Percy Jackson. He has a new series called Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. The first book is called The Sword of Summer. In it, we find Magnus Chase, who is the cousin of Annabeth, who most of you probably know was in Percy Jackson. She was the daughter of Athena. On his 16th birthday, in this one, Magnus, who's an orphan, learns that he is the son of a Norse god. On that same day, it's not really giving it away because it is what happens. He's killed by a fire giant and taken by a Valkyrie that he calls Sam to Hotel Valhalla, which is like a modernized version of the Norse afterlife. With the help of Sam and two elves, Magnus escapes Valhalla to foil the giant's plan to invoke Ragnarok. He wants to create chaos. A little bit of trivia about Mr. Riordan. His son, Haley, who he started Percy Jackson for, he would read him as bedtime stories. His son has dyslexia and ADD, which if you've ever read Percy Jackson and the Olympians, so does Percy. And that's why, because he based them off of his son. I'm going to give you just a little bit of this one. This is chapter 13. I'm not reading the whole chapter. It's too long. But it's Phil the Potato Meets His Doom. So in this part, Magnus has already been taken by Sam. She's a Valkyrie. And they are basically going to have dinner in Valhalla. So Phil the Potato meets his doom. We were swept up in a tidal wave of hungry warriors. Anjihar poured in from every direction, pushing, joking, and laughing as they headed for their seats. Hold on, Sam told me. She grabbed my wrist and we flew into the air, Peter Pan style. I yelped, a little warning? I said, hold on. We skimmed above the heads of the warriors. Nobody paid us much attention except for one guy I accidentally kicked in the face. Other Valkyries were also zipping around, some escorting warriors, some carrying platters of food and pitchers of drink. We headed toward what was obviously the head table, where the home team would have sat if this were a Celtics game. A dozen grim-looking dudes were taking their seats in front of golden plates and jewel-encrusted goblets. In the place of honor stood an empty wooden throne with a high back where two ravens perched, grooming their feathers. Sam landed us at the table on the left. 12 other people were just getting seated, 2 girls and 4 guys in regular street clothes, 6 Valkyries dressed more or less like Sam. Other newcomers, I asked. Sam nodded, her eyebrows furrowed. 7 in one night is a lot. Is that good or bad? More heroes dying mean more bad things are stirring in the world, which means, she pursed her lips. Never mind. Let's get seated. Before we could, a tall Valkyrie stepped in our path. Samira Al-Abbas, what have you brought us tonight? Another half-troll? Perhaps a spy from your father. The girl looked about 18. She was big enough to play power forward with snow blonde hair and braids down either shoulder. Over her green dress, she wore a bandolier of ball-peen hammers, which struck me as an odd choice of weapon. Maybe Valhalla had a lot of loose nails. Around her neck hung a golden amulet shaped like a hammer. Her eyes were as pale and cold as a winter sky. Ganilla, Sam's voice tightened. This is Magnus Chase. I held out my hand. Gorilla? Pleased to meet you. The girl's nostrils flared. It is Ganilla, captain of the Valkyries, and you, newcomer. The foghorn I'd heard earlier echoed through the hall. This time, I could see the source. Near the base of the tree, 2 guys held a black and white animal horn the size of a canoe, while a third guy blew into it. Thousands of warriors took their seats. Gorilla gave me one last stink eye, then spun on her heel and marched off to the head table. Be careful, Sam warned me. Ganilla is powerful. Also kind of a butt. The corner of Sam's mouth twitched. That too. She looked shaken, her knuckles white on the haft of her axe. I wondered what Ganilla had meant by a spy from your father, but since my windpipe was still sore from the last time I made Sam angry, I decided not to ask. I sat at the end of the table next to Sam, so I didn't get to talk to the other newbies. Meanwhile, hundreds of Valkyries flew around the room, distributing food and drink. Whenever a Valkyrie's pitcher was empty, she would swoop over the golden vat now bubbling over a large fire, fill her pitcher with yummy goat's milk mead, and continue serving. The main course came from a roasting pit at the other end of the room. Rotating on a 100-foot-long spit was the carcass of an animal. I wasn't sure what it had been when it was alive, but it was easily the size of a blue whale. A Valkyrie flew past, depositing a platter of food and a goblet in front of me. I couldn't tell what the slices of meat were, but they smelled great, drizzled with gravy with potatoes on the side and thick slices of bread with butter. It had been a while since I'd had a hot meal, but I still hesitated. What kind of animal am I eating? Sam wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. It's named Saramnir. Okay, first of all, who names their dinner? I don't want to know my dinner's name. Is this potato named Steve? She rolled her eyes. No, stupid. That's Phil. The bread is Steve. I stared at her. Kidding, she said. Saramnir is the magical beast in the Valhalla. Every day they kill it and cook it for dinner. Every morning it's resurrected, alive and well. That must suck for the animal. But is it like a cow or a pig or... It's whatever you want it to be. My portion is beef. Different sections of the animal are chicken or pork. I don't do pork, but some of the guys here love it. What if I'm a vegetarian? What if I want falafel? Sam became very still. Was that some sort of joke? Why would it be a joke? I like falafel. Her shoulders relaxed. Well, if you want falafel, just ask for the left flank. That part is tofu and bean curd. They can spice it to taste like just about anything. You have a magic animal whose left flank is made of tofu. This is Valhalla, paradise for warriors in the service of Odin. Your food will taste perfect, whatever you choose. So that one is Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. This is the first book in the trilogy, and it's called The Sword of Summer. The next book is a little different. It's Pride and Prejudice and Zombies by Jane Austen and Seth Grahame-Smith. Mr. Smith has taken the classic prose of Jane Austen and added some zombies, and I also believe some ninjas make their appearance in there. Quirk Books, who does these, they took a lot of public domain books like Pride and Prejudice, Anna Karenina, and then thought about all things that are pop culture fun, like zombies and ninjas and pirates, robots, and put them both together. So I'm going to do a little excerpt from this one. And in this one, Miss Elizabeth Bennet, our heroine from Pride and Prejudice, shows us what it's like in this world with their zombies. She's heading back to her house. There was suddenly a terrible shriek, not unlike that which hogs make while being butchered. Elizabeth knew at once what it was, and reached for her ankle dagger most expeditiously. She turned, blade at the ready, and was met with the regrettable visage of three unmentionables, their arms outstretched and mouths agape. The closest seemed freshly dead, his burial suit not yet discolored, and his eyes not yet dust. He lumbered toward Elizabeth at an impressive pace, and when he was but an arm's length from her, she plunged the dagger into his chest and pulled it skyward. The blade continued upward, cutting through his neck and face until it burst through the very top of his skull. He fell to the ground and was still. The second unmentionable was a lady and much longer dead than her companion. She rushed at Elizabeth, her clawed fingers swaying clumsily about. Elizabeth lifted her skirt, disregarding modesty, and delivered a swift kick to the creature's head, which exploded in a cloud of brittle skin and bone. She, too, fell and was no more. The third was unusually tall, and though long dead, still possessed a great deal of strength and quickness. Elizabeth had not yet recovered from her kick when the creature seized her arm and forced the dagger from it. She pulled free before he could get his teeth on her, and took the crane position, which she thought appropriate for an opponent of such height. The creature advanced, and Elizabeth landed a devastating chop across its thighs. The limbs broke off, and the unmentionable fell to the ground, helpless. She retrieved her dagger and beheaded the last of her opponents, lifting its head by the hair and letting her battle cry be known for a mile in every direction. Elizabeth found herself at last within view of the house, with weary ankles, dirty stockings, and a face glowing with the warmth of exercise. So that would be Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I know they made a movie out of it. Read the book. The last book I'm going to talk about is my favorite. It's part of a series, and it's also on my Kindle. That should tell you how much I love it. So it's very hard to see it, as you can see. It's the last book in the trilogy, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. It's called Library of Souls. It is the final installment, and we find Jacob Portman, who is our hero, Emma, who is the fire starter, and Addison, who is the talking dog. Fight in the start of this one, they're fighting a Hologhast, who is a creature sent by whites who want to destroy peculiardom, as they call it. And they kidnapped their friends, other peculiars. Jacob, Emma, and Addison must fight to get their friends and their beloved Miss Peregrine, who takes care of all the peculiar children, back by venturing into this very nightmarish world. So in the excerpt I'm about to read, Jacob is wondering how he managed to return to modern times because they were originally like in the 40s. This is a feat that's only supposed to be accomplished by Miss Peregrine and other Imbrans, which are the bird-type creatures that take care of the peculiar children. So here's just a little excerpt from my favorite book in the my favorite trilogy. This is Library of Souls. The present seemed suddenly so strange to me, so trivial and distracted. I felt like one of those mythical heroes who fights his way back from the underworld only to realize that the world above is every bit as damned as the one below. And then it hit me. I was back. I was in the present again, and I crossed into it without the intervention of Miss Peregrine, which is supposed to be impossible. Emma, I said, how did I get here? She kept her eyes trained on the street ahead, always scanning for trouble. Where? London? On a train, silly. No, I lowered my voice. I mean to now. You said Miss Peregrine was the only one who could send me back. She turned to glance at me, eyes narrowing. Yes, she said slowly. She was. Or so you thought. No, she was. I'm sure of it. That's how it works. Then how did I get here? She looked lost. I don't know, Jacob. Maybe there, Addison said excitedly, and we broke off wondering to look. His body was rigid, pointing down the street we just turned onto. I'm picking up dozens of peculiar scent trails now, dozens upon dozens, and they're fresh. Which means what? I said. Other kidnapped peculiars were brought this way, not just our friends, said Emma. The Whites' hideout must be close by. Close by here? I said. The block was lined with fast food joints and tacky souvenir shops, and we stood framed in the neon-lit window of a greasy diner. I guess I'd been imagining someplace eviler. Like a dungeon in some dank castle, Emma said, nodding. Or a concentration camp surrounded by guards and barbed wire fences, I said. In the snow, like Horace's drawing. We may find such a place yet, said Addison. Remember, this is likely just the entrance to a loop. I love these books because he uses, which again, I don't know if you can see it because unfortunately this is on my Kindle. He uses actual pictures that he has either acquired or bought or things like that. And he used them to make his characters. And that's part I really, really liked in these books. So that was Library of Souls, the last of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, excuse me. And that is the 5 books. Hopefully one of them sounded kind of fun. I think I'm going to go reread Wildwood now because that one I like a whole lot. So thank you very much.